The AYR holds the largest amount of archived Yowie files in the world, from the early 1800s to the modern day reports. Many of the reports from the last 200 years precisely conform to what many witnesses describe today. A tremendous height, weight and powerful build, similar hair colour and length covering most of the body, disproportionately longer arms than a human, with little to no neck and often a smell that can make a man vomit. Headlines in historical papers during the 1800s often used the term gorilla, the same noun still voiced today, sometimes with the additional phrase, with the glimpse of human-looking attributes. However, there can be variations. From time to time, we receive reports of a Yowie with a thinner toned muscularity rather than the bulk and mass of a gorilla. Short rather than tall, and differing size and length of what people recount of being a primate-looking muzzle. There are also differing behaviours and characteristics, particularly between day and night, which we've reasoned before. Also stated in the past, when the sea levels rose and Australia was isolated, what was here stayed here, land-trapped. And we more than likely have differing species, and perhaps from different times of history. Some of the anomalies reported could perhaps be mutations, which we see in all mammals. Again, this is something I've recently covered. One anomaly seldom heard but raised enough to take notice is a reported nictitating membrane of the eyes, or commonly referred to as sideways blinking eyes. This is a thin layer of film between the eyelid and eyeball that wipes sideways, kind of like a windscreen wiper. It cleans the eye surface while the main eyelid continues to blink in a conventional manner. Many animals have it: dogs, cats, kangaroos, camels, polar bears, obviously reptiles, and a few smaller primates. Both ancient hominins and hominids are said to have had a nictitating eye membrane, but we lost it over the course of evolution. In fact, both humans and primates still have the remnant within the inner corners of our eyes. If there are hominids, some more relic than others, trapped within the shores of this country, perhaps they are accountable for these Yowies with the reported sideways blinking eyes. All this, of course, refers to today's report. This report comes from a vast mountainous stretch of bushland that holds the highest rates of encounters in Australia. Yet the forest is widely untraversed. From what we've learned and presented so far, many varieties of what we know as the Yowie could be living in those remotely isolated peaks and valleys. In just a blink, I'll hand you over to AYR's Sarah Bignell. As I say, welcome back to Mandalong.
Me and my son have been sitting and talking about it a bit more. There's another kid that lived on the property in the house next door. We were actually having a chat the other night. He's seen what me and my son seen as well, and I was just like, it really threw me.
All three of you have seen...
All at different times.
Do you reckon it's the same being? Are they matching descriptions?
I think it is, because the one that I seen him 15, 20 metres. The young guy that I was talking to, you could hear the fear in his voice. He described the hands that I seen, the feet that I seen, and the face that my son Jordan seen, with around the eyes that had this slight orange, like a white Maltese dog, and they get like the tear staining and it turns orange. It was sort of like a sun bleaching tear staining thing, like around like its face, and it just sort of looked like it grabbed in between its thumb and its pointer finger and just wiped it sideways like it was annoying it sort of thing, and it just sort of stained its face. And yeah, all three of us have all said that. The face had like this orange hair around its eyes and nose. It's an old mining property, so many years ago they've undermined all the properties out there. That road, you're going to be pretty familiar with this location, it actually leads up into the Wadigan State Forest, which is where a few of your reports are.
Yes.
So the day that I seen this thing, I'd just finished riding in the forest. I come back to my property, which is basically a K and a half away from the end of the road, and something was just telling me in my mind to turn left. like as soon as I turned in my driveway, was I'll turn left and just, because I'd only just bought the motorbike, and I was like, turn left and, just go ride it and go along the fence line and check out the fences, because we had horses. So I was just riding along this little, I guess what you'd call would be a nature trail, or what the wallabies, and I'm riding along, and I got to the bottom of our paddock and I rode along our fence line, and off to my left was the bit of bush where I seen it and where my son seen it. Anyway, I've ridden past there and I've gone around again to the left again, and I was sort of riding parallel to the bush. I was under the power lines in the easement, where they take the dozers through and clear it for all the power lines. I was sitting there on my motorbike. It was probably about an hour ride that I'd just been on, so I was like, yeah, I'll sit here and I'll just get my breath back and just take it in and just had a good time, you know what I mean? I was out by myself riding and just had fun and relaxing. So I was like, yeah, I'll just sit here and take it all in, and I was sitting there and I still had my helmet on, and I was just standing there on the bike, and the bike was still idling, and I looked down and I went, okay, I've got to make sure this is in neutral, and then I'll take my hand off the clutch and turn it off. Looked down and put it in neutral and looked on the dash, and the green light was on, it was in neutral. I was, yep. I've looked up and something's caught my peripheral vision to my left. What the hell's that? Like, I just seen like this, like a shadow, I guess you'd say. It was just a real small shadow. Could have, like, I thought it might have been a bird or something. Caught me peripheral vision, and I sort of swung around and looked, and that's when I seen it. Like everyone else says, your head just rambles through all these things. What could it be? What could it be? And I'm just like, no, it can't be. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yowie. No, it can't be. And as everyone says, Yowies were the things that were in the little packets, the chocolate with the toys. I've looked over at this thing and it's just staring at me as I'm sitting on the bike, and I had my helmet on, and I quickly took my helmet off, like really, really quick, and I didn't not lose eye contact with this thing. And as it's looking at me, I've turned the bike off, and there was three expressions on this thing's face from the start. The first expression was shock, and it was shocked that I was seeing it, but at the same time it was shocked that it was seeing me as well. When I turned the bike off with the button, it just sort of looked like really inquisitive, and then it blinked, and this thing blinked sideways like a reptile. And I was just looking at this thing just going like, what are you? I've seen cows, I've seen wombats, I've seen big roos, I've seen stuff in the bush. But this thing, just to be so big and so quiet, yet so majestic, I was just staring at this thing in awe. And it honestly felt, it was probably only 30 seconds max, but it felt like a lifetime, you know what I mean? Because the stare and just the two looks that I got off it and the blink, just looked at me once the bike was off, done this real weird, it was like a scream but a growl at the same time. It's pulled itself around the tree, and like within 5 or 6 steps, like it just gone into this big bush of lantana. I'm just standing there and I'm like, did I just see that? And I didn't tell anyone about it for a while and kept it to myself. Yeah, and that's when I sort of started listening to your shows, and I'm thinking, these things are definitely out there. Like, when you get really, really scared and you can almost feel your heart skip a beat, and it's just like that ultimate fear of whatever's standing in front of you because you don't exactly know what it is. That was what I felt. I've listened to other episodes, like the one out at Colo and the one where he left the apple sitting on the log, and this thing's tracked around him and standing in front of him and it's chewing on his apple. That's not what I got off this thing. This thing was pissed off big time because I'd been down there, in the email previous weeks with the chainsaw, getting the wood ready for the next winter and stuff. The time that my son seen it as well, 2 to 3 months later, he was down there with the chainsaw as well. So he would have been making plenty of noise and that sort of thing too. And I don't think they mean to put off that vibe. At the same time, they are a scary looking creature, animal, whatever they are. There's a lot of people out there that are skeptical and don't believe it, but until you see things with your own eyes, it's pretty unreal once you see it. Just the size of the creature and how quiet that it could actually be. It's actually quite scary.
I just want to go through and pick your brain a little bit more about what you noticed about the being and about its features, okay? By the way, the sideways blinking eyes we've heard before. We've heard it come up a couple of times. I'd have to check with Dean. The actual part that blinked sideways, do you think it was the outer eyelids or is there some kind of...
Its eyes are like the size of coat buttons. Like, they're massive. It was nearly like a skin that was underneath its actual outer eyelid that blinked.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like, there's no other possible way that it can blink. You got to blink up and down to get the stuff out of your eyes. Running through the stuff that they run through, and there's got to be something there to protect them.
Crocodiles and other reptiles have, as you mentioned.
Yeah, like that, yeah. Like a meniscus, like a layer.
There's a kind of membrane that certain animals have that protects their eyes. It's underneath what we would call, and what we've got is an eyelid. It's underneath that, and it closes sideways. Did you see like an inner membrane move, or was it the outer membrane?
I could see the left and like half its right side of its face. And when I looked at its eyes, it looked like the eyelids were up down. That had the hair over its face and the red staining and stuff around its eyes. If it had turned around to me and spoke and said, "Can you help me?" it would have made sense. There was so much human DNA in this thing. It was unreal. That realistic.
Let's start from the top of the head and work down. What shape was the head?
Big buff head, half the size of more of a normal human head. Picture a big football player or something. No shoulders, very, very, very low shoulders, but just real staunched.
Same shape head as a human being?
Yeah. It wasn't cone shaped. Had a bit of a rise, but that could have been the hair. I don't know. No neck, like the footy players, and they go to the gym all the time, and they just, when it was standing there, that's what it looked like. It was huge. It was huge, just massive. I'm just looking at this thing's arms, and the other size of my leg. The muscles in its arms, like its biceps are the size of my leg muscles. It was massive.
How tall did you reckon it was?
I'm going to say 7.5 to 8 because I'm 5'11", and I know the tree it was standing next to. We actually measured it out, and it was in between 7.5 to 8. I couldn't say exactly from 15 to 20 metres away exactly where its head was because it went so quick, but I had that mental picture that I'd taken in my brain that I knew roughly whereabouts it was. It was a good while after that we went back down there. It was within the 2 to 3 months before it was sighted again that we went down and measured.
The skin on the face, could you see that through the hair? Like, was there a clear patch around the face, or was the face totally covered in hair?
I could see around his eyes. As I said, that it was like that sunburnt orange. You know how the black horses get the orange in their tails and the tops of their manes, like when they're in the sun too long? It had that around its face. The skin, really dark pigmentation. I'm not going to say it was black, but it was dark, and the hair looked like the bum out of Happy Gilmore. That ratty hair, that unkept. No smell. That was a weird thing. Okay, no smell. Yeah, like I've listened to ones and the people are, oh, the smell, you get this smell. Like, I work at a tip. I know the smell that people talk about. It had no smell, and just how quiet this thing was. It was scary. Its legs were just huge. They just looked like tree trunks by himself, just there. You could see the power in it. If it wanted to hurt you, it could. At the same time, I got the vibe it was angry and annoyed that I was there. So that's why I pretty well just, as soon as he took off, mate, I skedaddled as well.
Probably annoyed you were chopping down trees, I would say.
And this is what I'm thinking too, like...
The nose and the mouth, what did you notice about those? What was the shape of the nose?
It was very wide on its face, very wide nose. When you look back at the pictures of our ancient ancestors, they got the real big noses, and there wasn't so much a definition side profile, but face on, it just sort of looked like normal nose, sort of no big rid. It sort of met straight up to his mouth. There was just a tiny little gap. It looked like a Neanderthal man, yeah.
The nostrils
big. They were really big. Yeah, facing down, yep. The width of its nose, it was our noses on our human body, like they sort of go level with our tear ducts. This was sort of wider than that again. It was sort of like under its eyes, sort of halfway under, but it spread across its face on a different angle than ours.
Did you notice the mouth? Was it a large, wide mouth or a small mouth? Were there lips?
I couldn't see lips, so to say. It was just more the nose met the mouth. Okay, it looked out of proportion for its body. It kind of looked like a bit like a chimpanzee, but the nose was like real gorilla-y and the top of the head was real big and buffy.
Did it have a big muscular jaw and a prominent jaw, or was it a smaller chin?
Chin sort of rolled out towards its nose, a bit like a snout, but only on the bottom. It had like a big monobrow, like unmanicured eyebrows. Yeah, the eyes were like the size of, I'm going to say like 20-cent piece easy, if not a 50. Cheeks were covered in that reddy hair colour from where it looked like it cried or like the sun bleach thing, whatever. It had face on its hair, but you could see the face through the hair, like it was thinning. It was thin, not like it was on the rest of its body.
You could see that the dark skin through the hair. And you weren't quite sure about the colour of that skin, maybe a grey or a black or a brown?
I'm gonna say grey to black. Could even be a brown.
Did you get the feeling that this being was like young or middle-aged or old?
25 to 30. Had that real strong male energy come off. Maybe I should go back and get in contact with the property owner and try put the trail cam up, but it doesn't work. So many stories, it doesn't work.
No, there's no point. It's a waste of, well...
Do I just run around like a crazy man with a GoPro on and a chainsaw and hope to God that it pops up again, you know?
I don't know if I'd be going around with a chainsaw, but you might have more luck if you had a thermal camera, not an infrared camera, but a thermal camera, which is what we use. Did you notice the colour of the eyes?
Brown, very, very dark brown, almost black.
Was it just the one blink, or did you notice it happen a couple of times?
I just noticed the one, because once it blinked at me, that was when it turned and just let out this noise, or let out this screamy growl at me, and yeah, I knew it was time to get out of there. He's not happy.
The lids that blinked, a double set of lids underneath the normal ones that look like ours.
Yeah, it was nearly like a layer that was under our normal eyelid, but it went crossways.
What colour was it? Those extra lids?
Like a skin colour. It was nearly like it was its coloured skin. You know how I said black? It had a tinge of colour to it, but it had a light colour to it as well. It really threw me.
I'm not surprised. You said you noticed expressions on its face.
Yeah, I copped 3 expressions.
Okay, so what moved in the face for you to say, oh, that's shock, that's an inquisitive look? What was happening on the face?
Its eyes sort of opened wider, and then when I took my helmet off and I was looking at it, and when I turned my bike off, that was the look of, oh shit, what'd you just do? Like it was surprised. Its nose moved a bit too, like it sort of screwed its nose up a little bit. Once it realised I'm staring back at it as much as it's staring back at me, the mood just changed from shock to, bro, you shouldn't be here, I shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be seeing me, and I shouldn't be seeing you. The features were so close to human, yet so far.
When you saw it, it was half behind a tree. Was that right? So you only caught the left shoulder on the left side of the face?
Yeah, I got left shoulder, left leg, so big and so solid. And when it turned, I seen the back of it. The back was the same colour, the dark, the black, brown, straight down the middle of his back. As I said again, that sun-bleached, bit of orangey, red, real light brown. With
the left arm that you could see, how long was it? Where did it reach down to on the Yowie?
It definitely went past the tips. That was another thing that grabbed my attention too, that When it turned, it let go of the tree and sort of pushed itself off the tree, dropped its arm down, sort of hunched over forward the way it was facing, so I was looking at its back, powered through the bush. The arms were definitely between its knee and its hip, definitely longer than human arms. Had that monkey, gorilla type DNA in it, you know what I mean?
Could you see the hands?
Yes, they looked like gorilla, just hairy and dark. The fingers were like double the size of ours. 2 of our fingers is one of theirs, big and powerful.
The hair covering uniform all the way down the arms and the legs?
Yeah, like it sort of got to its wrist sort of thing and thinned out again how it did on its face. You could see knuckles and nails, and they were just all black, all really dark.
So you could see the nails. Were they claws? Are they long and pointed, or were they short?
Just when I was looking at this thing's hands, I was just looking at the size of its fingers, thinking this thing can really hurt you. Like, it had nails, like they were a bit pointy. You know, like when the girls go and get their nails done for a night out, they're long, but they're not too long, 2-3 centimeters, not overly long. If he wanted to have a scratch, he'd have a good scratch. He wouldn't rip himself open because they're not pointy and they're not that monster I think people make them out to be.
You said that the leg looked muscular.
Huge, absolutely huge. The arm was the size of my leg, and I'm 5'11", 120 kilos. Its leg was double my leg. Like, I'm looking at my leg now and I'm just like, yeah, that looks small compared to him.
What about diameter, do you reckon, for one of those thighs?
10 to 12 inches easy. Massive, but so quiet. This is the hard part to understand. How can something so big and beastie, and I'm going to call it beautiful, because I was just looking at this thing in awe. I've got a size 12 foot, and I'm not going to say dwarfed my foot, but it was definitely larger than mine, definitely wider, half a foot wider compared to ours, and flat-footed. It didn't look like it had an arch. You know how we've got arches under the bottom of our feet? Because it was just so big and so bulky, it just looks like its feet were flat. 1.5 of our normal foot, but it was just big and hairy, and the toenails gross, not manicured.
This being looks at you in a bit of shock, a bit of curiosity about your bike.
Got angry at the noise. Oh, you know, like when you hear cats fighting, a high pitch but a growl at the same time? It was that, but a bit more guttural.
Did you see the mouth move when it made that sound?
I was more fixated on his eyes. I just wanted to know what he was doing. I wanted to know that I was safe. I had 2 kids up in the house. I wanted to make sure I was getting back up there. You know when a kid has a tantrum and like fill their cheeks up with air and just go, "Ugh." It was like that.
2019 when you were
This
living
is 2019, yeah. I was actually living on the property and we were there for 3 years. Not there now, but over the 3 years since we've left the property, like, yeah, there's been a few more. As I said, John, the young bloke that used to live there, he come forward and he told me a story as well.
How old's John?
Yeah, John's 18. My son actually wrote down what he's seen. I said, bro, go and do it, mate. I said, this shit needs to be out there and only you know what you've seen. And he goes, Dad, I know what I've seen and I don't want to go back there. It scared him too, you know what I mean? And even John, when I spoke to John on the phone about it, he was like, because I'm glad I moved away from that property.
I would absolutely love to talk to both of them, especially if they've seen the same being that you saw.
Yeah. I said, and this stuff needs to be documented, boys. I said, because a lot of people didn't do that. I said, and it's our generation now that are trying to catch up. It's real and it exists.
In audio witness report number 189, we reported on another dirt bike rider who had a close quarters sighting at Mandalong. Nicotinating eyes were reported in the 2016 encounter at Gingura on the New South Wales-Victorian border, along with the Kirraville encounters of 1998. Perhaps nicotinating eyes are more common than we realise, due to many witnesses not being close enough to see such detail. You'd think a Yowie would stay away from a loud noise coming from a distance and would have plenty of opportunities to hide. But we see it time and time again along roadsides or crossing roads. I think sometimes they back themselves a little too much and aren't impervious to mistakes. And just like humans and animals, some of them just aren't too bright. Thanks for listening.